about a lot of the things that Jack Cruz, who's a big proponent of natural light, particularly right in the morning. And so I'm going to be starting on that in the morning. But I listened to his educational material quite a while ago, maybe exactly a year ago. And I just naturally know that the midday sunlight is not something you necessarily want to seek out, but the morning and particularly in the evening might be the most beneficial, right? And around this area, the sunsets are the best part along with the sunrises. So I can go sit, I don't know, in a spot or up near a bus stop or something in the morning, stay there for a half hour and just get that at 6 a.m. tomorrow. Maybe get up there about 5:45. I don't know. Maybe we'll start tomorrow. But I've been trying to do more therapy where I'm actually looking up at the sky and even exposing my eyes to sunlight with slight filtration through a window. Because a lot of what he says makes a lot of sense, but then there are some, he conflicts. He has a very caustic way of doing what he does, and maybe perhaps that's why he's good as a neurosurgeon. I don't know. Maybe he took someone else out that should be in his place. I have no idea. I'm talking about spiritually or metaphysically. There's a lot going on around us that we're not aware of, and the only people who are commended, recommended, and move their way up in this institution are those who sold out in some way. But I take the good information and I don't consider or take what one person says literally, completely, totality. There are many blends and versions of this. You've got Hammeroff and Penrose talking about aromatic amino acids, right? And then you have Jack Cruz talking about how photonic light gets absorbed by these aromatic amino acids, and that this isn't necessarily a good thing, right? But then if you got into the fact that it is creating and producing consciousness, and they're found in the eye, right, at very high concentrations, then you have to start kind of scratching your head and wonder. The first thing that I wonder is, what is a Zeitgeber? Because that is something that's been talked about. That's basically the timekeeper in our bodies. It has to be light, right? There has to be some photosensitivity to, and the default back to more of a computational subset or system that hails back to a clock that we're completely unaware of, right? So how do we gain control, if it's even possible, of this sort of fountain of youth, right? Well, I do very much believe in the orthomolecular nutrition plan. Linus Pauling won 2 Nobel Prizes for this work. He was a big proponent of vitamin C therapy, right? And obviously that ties directly into the sunlight when you're talking about shades and colors that Dr. Jack Cruz looks into as well. But he gets into some very interesting areas. I might post something up on one of my other channels regarding some of the doctors that he cites, but some really interesting studies on, cataracts and cataract surgeries. 1979, God, what was that doctor? Starts with an H. Let's see. Hollwich. 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 And he was a professor and a doctor. And he was born in 1920. And what he postulates is that in 1979 he had done these surgeries, cataract surgeries, where once he removed these cataracts, he saw a marked improvement with not just with people, but animals, a wide variety of different animals, as far as their metabolisms, some groundbreaking effects, as well as some things that correlate directly back to weight, you know, and how our bodies are perceiving on a sense level that is directed through light and light therapies and specific, you know, UV or infrared lights, right? Then I get into very esoteric aspects of this, because when you talk about diasynon goggles that supposedly were used, this is something that Cliff High actually talked about with his father, that his father actually was one of the proof setters there that firsthand experienced his helicopter crew, right? And one guy just started shooting randomly out of the side of the helicopter the second that he started wearing these things. Not soon after, he and the others began to see what they described as demons. I believe that this was in the Vietnam area. So they saw wings, they saw everything happening here on infrared, right? Because they saw it in red. I'm just assuming, right? And there was this big craze a few years ago, 2-3 years ago, where all these YouTube channels were buying these diasynon chemical treated goggles, and nobody's ever like reported anything. Like, they can't come up with any conclusive proof. And supposedly it was all too obvious, to the point where once Cliff High's father got back and he was able to put these things on for himself and figure out what the hell's going on here, he looks over toward an area that's a relatively, you know, open area, looking up at the sky, kind of trying to figure out what the heck were these guys looking at, what were they seeing, you know? Are they crazy, right? And sure enough, he's looking at the mist come over the trees, the treetops, and he starts seeing exactly what they're seeing. He's seeing these winged creatures flying in this very strange, red, hazy sort of way that these night vision goggles represented. And so I guess from that time on, there was a recommendation to switch over to the green that they even use now. I've got a pair of these Glass Owl kind of knockoff ones, but I've also got a I think it's not a flare. I can't remember the name, but it's a version where you can like plug it right into your phone. But point is that you see these different methods of light introduction into your nervous system, how that really controls the operation and our perception, and ultimately our life cycle, right? Exposure to these specific types of light, and that we can actually potentially experience a much richer form of light by only allowing ourselves to be exposed to specific types of light at a higher concentration, right? So anyway, it's a lot of interesting information that ties all back in together. Much of this, you know, it's almost like the infrared along with these aromatic amino acids, you know, phenylalanine is one of them. I believe histidine may be another, but and then there's a few more there, but they have these aromatic rings, right? And Hameroff kind of equates this and talks about, you know, you have these planetary bodies, these planetary systems that have rings as well, you know, like you kind of see this holographic representation where, you know, you see these ever larger constructs, and then this gradient going down into the ever, you know, smaller, minuscule complexities that seemingly are the same type of cymatic harmonics, right? And that these shapes being set in our eyes, right, in our bodies, throughout our bodies, and if that's what consciousness is, then it is showing implications, right, of this sort of systematic control mechanism, right, that kind of dictates the life cycles, you know, through like a galactic cycle here and now, right? And there's been a lot of talk about, you know, fountain of youth, or, you know, you look back at the Sumerians and you see these, you know, these depictions and these writing materials on Mesopotamia, you know, of these people who lived supposedly 20, 50,000 years, right? And then even talk about, I think in the Emerald Tablets, right? You have this sort of red rite ritual that's talked about, right? Where new bodies need to be taken up. And when you look at it, you start to realize that your development, right, as a human being, being able to develop yourself in all the ways that we are blocked, especially, you know, in this scholastic school system where we're really taught nothing. Even if you go get a PhD, really you're a PhD in nothing. You don't really know anything about anything. It's just like this technical aspect that keeps you working, makes you feel like you know, have some sort of a claim or respect above your average everyday plebeian, but you live in the society just like they do, right? And there's just this sort of highbrow aspect to it, right? Versus really understanding the construct of the universe, the cosmos, if you will, looking at geometrical structures, understanding how to not manipulate. I mean, this is where like these, you know, people like Aleister Crowley and L. Ron Hubbard, you know, Scientology is a big one today, right? Where they really wanted to gain more power. They were insane people that felt a complete and total loss of power. And they've invariably misled a lot of people, right? Because there's a harmonic aspect to being able to embrace energetics, balance it, much like the UV and the infrared need to be balanced. And you'll find that balance at those certain times. And even in the Emerald Tablets, where, you know, it's discussed, though, you know, however you want to, how much credence you want to give that. It's been around for a long time, supposedly, right? And a lot like a lot of the Zoroastrian literature, but this is supposed to predate that, right? Or at least exist as far back as the Zoroaster, the Zarathustra lore, right? So you find that there's this heavy focus, not just on Hermetic principles, but like a north and south, you know, that you should face one way when you lay, right? Where your head is facing north, and then, you know, when you do this polarization or this flip at the end of the day, you want to lie the other way, right? So, and there may be times when you're out of balance and you need to get back into this sort of cadence or harmony, and you may have to reverse that type of thing, you know, through an electromagnetic resonance. But what we find is that in the morning you get more of the UV, natural UV light, and possibly in the evening you're getting more of the red, you know, photonic energy. That's, at least that's the way that I interpreted what Dr. Jack Cruz was talking about. And even more so, when you're talking about like 30-degree, like north parallel line, supposedly that is the time, that is the place to be in order, you know, North America, Pacific, several other places, where you're able to best harness these energies at a specific time, you know, in order to meet sort of this window that occurs that could very well be described medically, scientifically, or even esoterically. So anyway, don't know if I'll be putting this up, but Rogue Beast Warrior out.